Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Okay, so the NFL Combine has come close to wrapping up, and there's a lot of questions about who had their stock rise, who had their stock fall, and what the Browns can do with all the information, given that they have a lot of draft picks to attack. So let's talk about the Combine. I think the first name that started the controversy up in the Combine was somebody that we all knew was going to do it, Shamar Stewart. Look, people feel one of two ways about Shamar Stewart. Either you don't care that he was not productive, you care about more intermediary kind of acts of production, right? Like pressure and things that aren't as tangible as a sack, right? A sack is a very tangible stat. Everybody knows when a sack happens. Everybody knows why a sack is important. Some of these other stats that he is able to rack up, pressure rate, pass rush run rate, that kind of stuff is not as tangible, right? So this basically becomes an argument with Shamar Stewart on what you think about that kind of a prospect. And both, like the prospects with the super tangible statistics and all the stuff behind them, some of those have failed. The same thing happens with the prospects that aren't as tangible but are super athletic. So there's really no advantage on either side of this argument. But Shamar Stewart, 6'5", 267 pounds. I believe it's 3 pounds lighter than Myles Garrett. 34-inch arms, incredible. At a 40 time of 4.59. Yes, at 267 pounds, my man ran a 4.59. Incredible. He almost outran Tez Johnson, who's like 150 pounds and plays wide receiver. 40-inch vertical, again, at 260. These are crazy combine numbers. Like, if he were more productive at Texas A&M, people would be comparing him comfortably with Myles Garrett. But he was not that productive at Texas A&M. Now, there's a lot of debate on why he wasn't productive. Was it because of the type of technique that he had to run at Texas A&M, where they're trying to protect against RPOs, and you're basically asking your interior defensive lineman to surf, wait, and not crash, not be aggressive, not go downhill? There is some credence to that. That might be why Shamar has not been the most productive guy in college. But I think 3.5 sacks in his career is a bit of an aggressively bad number to have it all be justified by simple technique, because, yeah, they're running this kind of technique all over in college football, and guys aren't this low in sacks, even if they do play the interior. So, like, there's something up with that number. Is this going to be a Jadeveon Clowney type prospect where the sack numbers never follow the athletic gifts? Where do you draft a prospect like this is a big question, because like Jadeveon Clowney's career is pretty good for like a 7th overall pick, but he's just not somebody you take number 1 overall. Shamar Stewart is going to be the Pandora's box of this year's draft class. He is whatever you want him to be. And I think that is a dangerous proposition for NFL GMs, because you could look at Shamar and convince yourself that that could be Myles Garrett. You could look at Shamar and tell yourself that's fool's gold. He is going to be the most tricky prospect to work out your feelings around, because so much about him is intangible, which makes this a difficult thing to process here. James Pierce, I thought he had a pretty good combine, came in at 6'5", a little bit underweight at 245. I think the 245 is fine, right? I don't think that's like super underweight. It's not like 239 or something like that. A little bit thin for somebody at 6'5". Like, usually you want 6'5", you want him to be at least sitting at 250 pounds, just because of how body ratios work. But 32-inch arms aren't the longest, but he ran a 4.47. Which, I mean, at 245 pounds is pretty incredible. A 10-yard split, that's just straight up elite. 1.56. Remember, like 1.6 is the threshold number that a lot of people look at. Like, if you're within 1.6 before 1.7 as an edge, that's usually considered very elite. Like, that's where TJ's at. I think TJ's at 1.64. Myles was at a 1.61. He came in at a 1.56. So incredible 10-yard split for him. The ball get off for him should be really good in the NFL. And the take for him is strong. There are a couple questions about character I think I've heard about James Pierce, but somebody else you could factor into that conversation if the Browns trade back at 2. James Pierce and Shamar Stewart start to become conversations in the first round, but I don't think they become conversations in the first round, number 2 overall. Interior defensive line, Jordan Phillips, I thought he had a fine day, a fine weekend, moved really well in drills, liked his violence, was 6'2", 312 pounds, came in with a little bit of short arms. Darius Alexander from Toledo, I think he's had the best pre-draft prospect of any 3 technique in this draft class. 6'4", 305, came into this process not really being talked about as one of the better interior defensive linemen. Now he will be one of the first, or he will be in that first group of defensive linemen that go off the board in the interior. 34-inch arms, 10-inch hands, a 4.95 40 with a 1.72 split, which is pretty incredible at 305 pounds. And here's the thing that got me. Darius Alexander strong. I don't know if you've never bench pressed. Please listen to me when I say that him with 34-inch arms, benching 225 pounds 28 times is incredible. If you don't know, with the bench press, it is your arm length that determines the level of difficulty for you, right? I don't have the longest arm. I could put up 225. I think the most I've ever put 225 up is like, 10? I put it up 10 times or 8? I think 8. 8's the highest. I'm not going to cap and say I got 10. 8. I have pretty short arms, and with 225, I think I was sitting at 205 at the time. I was able to put up 8, which was a pretty good number for like a pedestrian, right? I'm not an NFL athlete, so you put up 225 8 times. It's a pretty good number, but I have short arms, so it's easier for me. If you have long arms, that makes it harder because the weight is going to feel like a lot heavier once it comes down because you're bringing it down. It's just going through more gravity, and there's more force that you have to put up. So with 34-inch arms, I don't care if he's 305 pounds, right? With 34-inch arms, that is very difficult because that is a much more difficult exercise when your arms are that long. So, yeah, Darius Alexander, look, I wouldn't be mad if the Browns went for him in the 2nd or 3rd round. Maybe if the Browns trade back from 33, Darius Alexander starts to become a conversation. I think Jordan Phillips is more of a conversation in the 3rd round. Derek Harmon might be a conversation at 33. Came in at 6'4.5", 313 pounds, 34-inch arms, 10-plus inch hands. So physically, his measurements were great. Ran a 4.95 40 with a 1.74 split. That's pretty much the same 40 that Darius Alexander ran, while being 10 pounds heavier, so you expect him to be a conversation piece in the early part of the 2nd round if he's not gone in the first. Jahad Campbell is another guy. I think he's the best off-ball linebacker. I'd be surprised if he made it to the 2nd round, and if he did, I'd be very interested in him because he's not one of these itty-bitty linebackers, right? He's 6'3", he's 235 pounds, so really good size on him. Ran a 4.52 with a 1.53 split. This is somebody who could pass rush, be an explosive downhill threat. If you are seriously concerned, if you're the Browns, right? If you do not know if JOK is going to play football again, getting Jahad Campbell will be amazing JOK insurance. And then if JOK does come back, then you have 2 explosive weapons in that linebacking room. So I don't really see a downside to this. 2 big guys, or 2 linebackers who can cover really well. Jahad Campbell gives you that added benefit of being 6'3", right? He might be able to put 10, 15 more pounds on in the NFL while remaining extremely explosive. So you're talking about having a guy out there at 240, 250, and I think with the way the league's changing to adjust to this too high stuff that a lot of the league's been running, you're going to want bigger linebackers. Jahad Campbell makes a ton of sense there. A guy I thought stock went down a little bit, Chris Paul. I think a couple of years ago, Chris Paul would have been a really good, really hot prospect, but Again, he's smaller, 6'1", 220 pounds, seen as a coverage guy coming out. And he has a 4.63 40, so he's not as athletic as you would hope as a coverage guy, so that makes you concerned. Somebody who people were concerned about his athletic ability, Danny Stutzman, 6'3", 233 pounds, 4.52 40, so you feel pretty good about his athletic ability translating to the NFL here. So Jahad Campbell, I think, and Danny Stutzman, two guys that you might want to keep an eye on if this JOK thing feels super serious for the Browns, which it might be. I don't know. We'll see. I'm waiting for them to say something official before I start to speculate on somebody's career. But if it does feel like it's in that direction, even if it doesn't, I think these two, Jahad and Danny Stutzman, would be two guys you have to consider, given their speed, athletic ability, Danny's ability to cover the run, Jahad's ability to rush the passer. Nick Emenwari completely destroyed every single expectation you had of him in combine. 6'3", 220 pounds, so he's not a small safety at all. This is a big guy here. Ran a 4.38, a sub 4, right? The 10-yard split on this is 1.49. Incredible. A 43-inch vertical. This is somebody who's already 6'3", already 220 pounds. A 43-inch vertical. That's a crazy number. And then the broad jump was just absurd. 11.6. 11.6. Nuts. And then to top it all off, my man did 220 on the bench press, and he showed up with 32-plus inch arms. I don't know much about where his tape is. I have not watched a ton of Nick Emenwari, I believe out of South Carolina, right? Is he South Carolina guy? I have not watched a ton of him. But I will go and watch a ton of him because that's incredible. That's the kind of performance that like Andrew Berry dreams for at the safety position, and the Browns are looking for a safety. He might get overdrafted because of the measurables are insane with him. They're just insane. I have to look at what the tape is with him. So expect a film review for him in the coming months because that dude just made my list. Oh my God, that is incredible combine performance. You got to see something on tape though, right? You got to see him use that shit on tape a good amount before you can get carried away with it. But incredible performance from him. Armand Membu, I thought he had a really good week, made some money, kind of convinced people he could play tackle. Long arms, ran a 4.91 with a 1.74 split at 332 pounds, so he can move like a tackle. Tate Rutledge and Jarrett Wilson, the Georgia boys, I thought they had a really good combine. Ariante Essery, thought he moved really well in his drills during the combine. Same thing with Donovan Jackson, think he can be a tackle. And I think JCJ moved well too. So I think all those guys kind of showed that they're in that conversation for tackle. Tight end wise, Harold Fanon Jr. had an up and down combine. I thought his measurements weren't great. He came in at like 6'3". He is a bit undersized in this class at tight end. This is a class that has like a bunch of guys at 6'5" that can jump really high. He's not a guy who can jump really high. He's not a tall guy for a tight end. He's only 6'3", so a bit undersized there at the tight end position. So you were hoping that the athletic numbers would be better. Ran a low 4.7, but the 1.56 split is pretty good, and the sub 7 second 3-cone is pretty big for him too, to show that he could separate. The problem with him is he's the size of a big wide receiver, but a small tight end. I don't know what you do with that in the NFL, right? And the history says it's not a great like track record of being able to do much with that. Maybe he could be an H-back guy. I don't know. But that's the big issue with Fanon, is that a very productive player for Bowling Green, but undersized at the tight end position. He's not a good enough athlete to play wide receiver full time. What do you do with him? With his size, with his skill set, all of that stuff here. And then wide receivers, Tez Johnson, I think I'm done with him as a prospect, to be honest with you. Very slight, just too slight for me. 150 pounds is very light, and the athletic numbers weren't terrible. But for a guy that you project to put 30 pounds on, to get to 185 where he would be normal undersized, you have a ton of concerns, right? Because he had a 4.5 40 at 153 pounds. So if you put on 30 more pounds for him, what that 40 is going to turn into is like a 4.6, a 4.7. This is a guy who a lot of his game predicates on explosiveness and speed instead of crispness, which makes you concerned. Had a great 3-cone, right? Super quick in tight spaces, which you see on film a ton. But again, this is somebody you're projecting to have to add a lot of weight to his frame, and can he even do it if he came into the combine super light? And you could just see it when he was out there. He just looks way too thin for an NFL wide receiver. So not big on Taz, to be honest with you. Not sure he's going to have a great NFL future. But the athletic ability really, I think, needed to test a little bit better for him. Jack Beck, 6'1", 214. I thought he had a pretty solid combine. 6.84 3-cone, showed natural hands in all the drills. Really good Senior Bowl for him as well. I think he is a fun wide receiver. Like, he's kind of like this year's Ricky Pearsall to me. A guy that you feel like is just going to be a good pro. You don't know what level of pro, but like a good pro there. Jaden Higgins, if you want a big wide receiver, this is your guy. 6'4", 214 pounds, 33-inch arms with a 39-inch vertical. She had a 10.8 broad jump, so you know he's plenty explosive. I thought he had a pretty decent Senior Bowl, followed this up with a good combine. You can see him, he's not a terrible 50-50 ball guy. Sometimes these guys are tall but can't do 50-50 balls. He's not a terrible 50-50 ball guy. Like him, I don't know where I take him, but I like Jaden Higgins. Elik Ayamaner, 6'2", 206 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, ran a 4.4 40, which I thought was a pretty good number for him. I think that was the big concern with Elik. Was he a 4.6 guy, a high 4.5 guy, or was he a 4.4 guy? My comp for him right now is like late career Amari Cooper, but he's running a 4.4, which makes me more confident in his ability to be early career Amari Cooper too, with a 1.58 split. So pretty good there for Elik. I like him. He plays wide receiver the way I like it. I'm biased on that, right? Like, some guys just play the position the way you like it, and you like him because of that. Big physical guy, not the route runner that Amari Cooper was coming out of college. Nobody will ever be that good of a route runner coming out. But, I think a solid enough guy, really strong, dealt with some terrible quarterback play in college. Matthew Golden ran a sub 4.3. His stock's been rising since the playoffs, man. Like, it's been like Isaiah Bond down, Matthew Golden up. That's been the theme of the offseason. So, these are all guys to look at if you're the Browns, right? Jack Beck might be in that late second, early third conversation. Elik is definitely in that second trade-up conversation. Same thing with Matthew Golden. Somebody like Emeka Egbuka would also be in that conversation. I think those are all good fits for what the Browns like to do. Running back was, I think, interesting. I mean, all these running backs look good. I'm going to talk about like just small things that stood out to me. I did not expect Quincy Junkins to test better than Travion Henderson. He did. Now, I don't know if Travion was hurt or if Quid was hurt during the season, because when you watch it on tape, Travion looks like a significantly better athlete than Quincy. He looks faster. He looks quicker. He looks more explosive. Not to say that Quid isn't, but Quid is, or at least on tape, looks slower. Now, maybe Quid played the year hurt. Now he's healthy, and this is what he was always capable of. Maybe Travion is a little injured right now and playing through drills, but this surprised me. Like, this result surprised me. Quid came in at 6 foot, 221 pounds, which that's important to remember. He's 221 pounds. Travion came in at 5'10", 202. So we're talking about almost a 20-pound difference between the two backs. And look at the numbers, right? 4.48 40 for Quid. Trey ran a 4.43, which obviously is a higher number than Quid, but think about it. Quid's carrying 20 extra pounds on him. And Quid had a better 10-yard split than Travion, a 1.51 split for him. Trey had a 1.52 split. The vert, they were identical with Quid being much heavier, right? 38.5. The broad jump, Quid did better. So like that's the drill that measures explosiveness. 11-foot broad jump for Quid Sean, where Trey was at a 10'8" broad jump. That surprised me. I didn't expect that. So I would like to know more about why it is that Quid looked a little slower. Like, was it the system he was running? He's somebody you definitely want to get on a visit and interview and figure out what happened there, and if the testing shows you something different, because I do like how Quid runs. He's a very physical runner. He loves contact almost to a fault. I think his comp is Kareem Hunt coming out of Toledo. The problem with him was like, hey, it looks like at times he doesn't have long speed, right? You watching the national championship game, he breaks away and he didn't hit an extra gear, and you're like, did he get injured or something like that versus Notre Dame? Something's up, because like if he ran a 4.48, he should be faster than what he looks like on tape. So that's a big one there. I think Caleb Johnson's another one who I thought would be faster based on how he looks on tape. 6'1", 224 pounds. So he's a big guy, but ran a 4.57, a little bit slow there. And the split is what concerns me. Like, it took him a lot to get up to that. Yeah, where Derrick Henry had a similar 40 time and a similar split. But Derrick Henry came in at like 247. So I don't think this is the same thing as Derrick Henry. Like, I think this is a little bit of a red flag here, right? That 1.62 split being one of the worst splits of all running backs, I think does concern me for somebody that you're going to want to plug in to a wide zone. I really like Caleb Johnson off the film. He had a bad day athletically testing. I wonder what was behind that. Was he injured? Did he carry more weight coming into this? He's another guy you would want to interview to figure out what the hell, why that number was what it was. Yeah, like even somebody he compares to physically, and I thought he would compare to a lot, was like David Johnson, the old running back for the Arizona Cardinals from back in the day. David measured in 6'1", 224 pounds. But his 40 time was 4.5 flat, not like a high 4.5, and the 10-yard split was like 1.58. So that 163, it concerns me. It doesn't matter who you comp him to. On the other end, like Omarion Hampton, hey man, at a similar size, I think even a little bit bigger, had a much better testing physically. I don't like Omarion's tape as much as I like Caleb's tape. But it might not matter because I don't know physically if that's going to be able to translate to the next level. Devin Neal, another wide zone guy, I thought he tested pretty bad too. So interesting stuff to see here. Who's going to test well, who's going to test badly. We're comparing a lot of these running backs to the running backs in his class, which is unfair because his class is incredible. But that's something I thought about as well. And if that's going to be something that you care about, right? You don't want to just go on these numbers, but if you're a team, you would want to interview this guy, figure out what happened, get some more information on why that 40 time was that. But that's my initial impressions from the combine. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section down below. Did anybody become your favorite player for the Browns to draft at a specific spot because of the combine? Y'all let me know. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.